All right, we are going to get started with our webinar. Good evening, LSR 7. We are so excited to welcome you to our first webinar in the district. Thank you for being part of a new thing in LSR 7. We're trying this out to support our parents and our school community in communicating around issues of high interest to parents. And so my name is Katie Bergen. I'm a member of the public relations team, and I can't think of a better topic to kick off our speaker series than successful school transitions. So tonight I have three special people here to help us along in a conversation about how we in LSR 7 support our incoming kindergartners, our middle schoolers, and our high schoolers. And we're also going to talk about ways that you as parents and caregivers can support your students as they level up to a new school environment. But before I introduce our three panelists, I'm just going to give you a brief overview of what to expect tonight as we wait for some people to trickle in. So tonight I will serve as moderator, and for the next 30 minutes or so, I'm going to ask our panel some questions about successful school transitions. Then we're going to pivot to a Q&A session where we'll take questions from the audience. So if you would like to engage with our Q&A, I'm going to direct you to that Q&A button at the bottom of your screen to pose a question to us. We ask that you keep the questions relevant to our discussion tonight, and we'll strive to follow up with you personally if we can't get to your question live. So without further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce you to our panel tonight. I'm going to start with our elementary representative, Casey Blakemore. Mr. Blakemore, can you tell us who you are, what your job title is, and what your job entails, and then just a little bit about the aspects of your job that relate to welcoming new students to a new building?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Katie. My name is Casey Blakemore. I'm an elementary counselor at Richardson Elementary, and I am also the lead elementary counselor. So I get to support kindergartners coming into my building, but also working with other elementary counselors across the district and thinking through how do we welcome them, how do we get them prepared, how do we prepare parents, and just all sorts of activities that we might do throughout those first few days of school to help increase belonging and help students enjoy themselves and start to be a part of our building.
Awesome. All right, Mr. Lindquist, I'm going to go to you next.
I'm Brian Lindquist. I'm the principal at Pleasantly Middle School. A couple things we all do as middle schools. We start back in February. We facilitate transitions and meetings through all staff members, all students in our feeder systems. Leads us all the way to transition day, which sets us up for success moving forward with all students.
Excellent. And Dr. Maid.
Hi, I'm Kayla Maid. I'm an assistant principal at Lee Summit West High School, specifically alphabets A through D. I have the privilege of helping plan our big transition day before students come into our building, our big building here at Lee Summit West. So I truly enjoy just being able to allow students to get in here and just get acclimated to what it means to be a Titan. It is very similar to Broncos and Tigers as well. So that's something that I do, that I'm a part of.
Great. So we're going to dive in deeper into all of the things that you guys just mentioned. But first, you've had a chance to meet our panel. And before we really get going, we want to learn just a little bit more about you. So I'm going to actually start a one-question poll that simply asks what school level your students are transitioning into. So I'm going to leave that up for the next 30 seconds or so. And we just ask that you tell us a little bit more about what students you're looking to support next year. And that will help guide some of our communication efforts as we enter our next school year. So I'll give you another 30 seconds or so to finish the poll. All right, it looks like we have a lot of representation from middle school today. I'm going to share the results so you guys can see. So 63% of you are representing middle school, 22% representing incoming kindergarten students, 15% high school, and then some other people who are just here to learn a little bit more about what we do in LSR 7. So thank you guys for telling us and sharing that information. So let's get started. We're glad you're here, but now we're going to turn to our panel with our first question. And so really my first question is for all of you. As leaders in different capacities, how do you personally define a successful transition for students who are entering a learning environment for the first time? And just why is that important? So Dr. Maid, I'm actually going to direct that question to you first. And Mr. Blakemore and Mr. Lindquist, it's coming to you next.
Sure, I think it's important. Every one of our buildings is a very large building at the secondary level. It can feel very intimidating for students to come into such a large building, especially since as of right now, they're transitioning from only a 7-8 building. So it's important for us to make sure that students feel belonged and they see their teachers, they get the lay of the land of the building, but also know how they can get involved so they can have a true authentic experience just outside of our academics that we showcase here. So we want students to be involved in every aspect of our school day, whether that be, extracurricular activities, in terms of athletics, activities in terms of clubs or music or band or theater. So that's what we really want our students to, when they come here, while it's a very large place, we think that it becomes very smaller when they get integrated into doing things that are specific to them and things that help them make them feel like they belong in our school family.
Excellent. And Mr. Lindquist, can you answer that question for middle school?
Yeah, it might sound pretty similar to high school. So our big goal here and how we define success, it's taking all of those feeder systems globally at the middle school level, taking the students and finding a passion for them. The goal is for them to explore, find things they love, take classes maybe that weren't quite as intense in the elementary level, and maybe they have 6 electives where they can travel around and find different things that really ignite and create a reason for them to want to come to school. On that same facet, it's the first time in currently 6 to 7 years that students have the opportunity to make new friends. And that belonging piece really comes from the academics, the activities, the athletics, and the passion exploration that they have. So for a student to be defined as successful at the middle level, they explored early on, they took risk to get outside of their shell, get outside of their comfort zone, and connect with people, both staff and students. And by the time they head to high school, we're trying to set them up and say, these are the things you are passionate about. These are the focuses you have gained throughout middle school, and then send them on their way there so that they can continue to grow and become the people they want to be.
Excellent. And Mr. Blakemore, how do you define a successful school transition from your vantage point as a counselor?
So being specifically an elementary counselor, very different from what you might have heard from secondary and high school. Obviously we want kids to feel like they belong. We want them to explore. But when we're thinking about kindergartners first coming into a building, like some of them don't know how to tie their shoes. Some of them, haven't stood in a line before. Some of them haven't been in an organized, setting like that before. So the bar for us is, well, not necessarily the bar, but really our lens is more about, meeting everybody where they're at, understanding that, if this is their first time in a school, that they're not going to be in the same place as somebody who went to preschool for 3 years, or, understanding that that we're just getting to know them, that this is their first experience. And so having it be really positive, finding lots of ways for them to connect to each other, to learn about this big building that they just walked into, and to be able to kind of figure out what is school? What does it actually look like to be in school, to be a student, and to be a learner? So to be successful with all that, like helping them connect to each other, helping them be comfortable at school, helping them understand, like, even though that first week of school was fun, like you are going to come back the next week. It does keep going. And we, have fun, but we also have lots of things to learn, and lots of growth to do. That's one of the beautiful parts about elementary. We just see so much growth, having them from 5 to 12.
Absolutely. For my next question, I want to ask a question that I imagine it's a specific question. I imagine it's on a lot of parents' minds. And Mr. Lindquist, could you go first on this one? It's, what specific transition activities can you expect when students level up to your building?
All right, so I'll speak globally for all the middle schools.
Mm-hmm.
Our first focus is going to be on academics. That starts in January or February, depending on where you're at in the timeline. That's counselors and administrators going into the elementary buildings. We sit down for multiple hours with all classes, all students. We talk about Our focus is academics. We talk about all the offerings, what middle school looks like, what hallways look like, what lunch might look like, and start to just barely skim the surface on what they need to do and really what middle school looks like. That transitions in the spring to an athletic and activity piece where coaches will visit oftentimes elementaries. And in this case, on the transition piece with some of our boundary changes, our coaches are visiting fellow middle schools. So if there are students transitioning from Summit Lakes to Pleasant Lee or any version of that with these trails as well, coaches are visiting other schools along with principals to welcome the students and provide them opportunities to enroll in volleyball, football, cross country, meet coaches, connect with kids who will be making that transition with them. That's in the spring. Over the summer, we'll have the updates, whether it's construction or, hey, guess what's coming? This transition day on, somewhere in mid-August. I won't give a for sure date. I don't want to pin anybody
That's
into
smart.
a date yet, but those transition days are the initial 6th grade and 7th grade pieces now for this year, our 2-year transition, for them to come in and meet everybody and understand the new building and see what's going on. As we go into the year, really like I said, it's about finding a passion. And on the transition for a middle school specifically, we all have ways that we connect students with clubs, activities, and athletics. And it's a constant promotion to try to maybe connect with friends, whether it's an after school piece where we get them to come in and realize they had more people they knew that were going out for this, or an advisory activity where they see, oh, this student went out for cross country and I didn't, and they're my best friend. I might want to go that direction. So really it's a focus from a January or February to August, where we try to build those initial blocks to get students excited about being in this building.
And Mr. Blakemore, what do welcoming activities look like at the kindergarten level?
So it starts early for us as well. Kindergarten kickoff activities where parents can learn more about kindergarten and transition in the spring, screenings, a meet your teacher night where they get to be in the building and be excited and meet their teacher and drop off some supplies and tour and meet some other staff such as myself. We have a variety of events like starting from day one, depending on the building, there might be kind of like a boohoo yahoo, like PTA session, which is kind of like a happy, sad moment where as parents, if they, so choose, and I don't know what the restrictions will be this fall, obviously, and hopefully they'll be less with COVID, but that, historically we had allowed parents to like bring their kindergartners in and they're walking them to class first day if they want to. And then in the library, there'd be kind of a gathering where, you're either boohooing or you're yahooing, depending on your perspective. And that kind of gets, families involved as well. And then there's lots of different touring activities that kindergarten teachers create to help students familiarize themselves with the building. Lots of things for them to kind of figure out when it comes to like, where do I go at the end of the day? Where's the bathroom? All kinds of things that, a 5-year-old needs support with. And so lots of things like that, lots of ways to get them, interacting with each other, interacting with their new technology, because they get a Chromebook as well. So lots of firsts for them and lots of other staff that are part of that as well. So that might look like school counselors, reading specialists, other staff in a school who do not have a classroom are often kind of, making kindergarten their home base for the first several days, because they just need some extra support to be able to make sure that they can be successful as they transition in, and having more friendly faces, more adults that, parents and students both know that like we are there to love them, we're there to take care of them, just helps ease that transition.
And Dr. Maida, I'm sure that familiarizing process is still very important when you have incoming freshmen. So tell us a little bit about what incoming freshmen can expect from the transition activities perspective.
Yeah, very similar to what Mr. Lindquist was talking about. We start in February with 8th grade parent night, and we kind of talk to our 8th grade incoming parents about what classes we offer, the difference between our coursework and advanced studies coursework. We talk about how to get involved, and then we go right into counselors meeting with every 8th grader and just talking about the academic side of it. Mr. Lindquist spoke to the fact of coaches going in, and we even have some of our elective departments even doing showcases at the middle school level, especially our art department. just to try to get some excitement about, okay, you've taken these classes here, well, you're going to take even more classes when you get to us. Obviously, we have a lot of summer camps, that are getting ready for our fall and winter and spring sports seasons. But really our biggest day is freshman transition day that we have in the fall. And we just want them in a building. We want them here. We want them to see their teachers. We want them to walk the building. We are very intentional about making sure that they know what lunch shift they're eating in, and so they can see what peers are in their same lunch shift. That is one of our biggest, I would say, the biggest thing some of our freshmen struggle with, just the anxiety of the lunchroom and how it works. And are my friends even going to be in the lunchroom because they're going to be eating lunch with seniors or, students that are not their age. So we really try to be very intentional about making sure that the spaces are safe so they know who's going to be in there. And then we also have added at Lee Summit West another transition day for them in October, which we call that Freshman Transition Day 2.0. We really talk about A+, we talk about study skills, we talk about different things during that day. So we try to be as continuous as possible. One of the other things, and I can't speak to Tiger High or to Bronco Nation over there, but we also give a t-shirt. So we want Lee Summit West, we want our students to walk out with our brand and our mascot, and we want them to feel like they're a part of our family. And we think if you dress and you have the Titan logo on you, then that's just an extra step that we want them to, like they are a part of our family.
Mm-hmm. I'm sure that our other high schools have the swag set up. If they were here, I'm sure that they would be putting that in the chat. You mentioned specific things like anxiety about lunch. And I wanted to ask you as a follow-up, what are some of the potential challenges that you see or concerns that students come in with? And then what are some of the supports that you have already in place to address those?
I think lunch is a big thing. Entering and exiting the building.
Mm-hmm.
So what does drop off look like? What does the bus line look like? And that's why we just start with all freshmen that first day. And we have freshmen and we have Titan ambassadors, which is a lot of our upperclassmen, and they're going to be in a totally different t-shirt and they're going to be very welcoming. So, do students know how to come in the building? Do they know where to go? Just so they aren't walking around like they're feeling lost. Lunch is a big thing, but also hallway traffic is also, especially in some feeder systems, they have separate hallway traffic, zones where you have to do this. That's not how we are. And so, they're going to see that while, yes, it's just freshmen that first day, our hallways are going to get a lot more crowded when we add in 3 more grades. So we just want some of those unstructured times to make sure that we have specific things in place so that they kind of know that going ahead. And also just getting to see their teachers. We don't do any instruction the first day. We just go over nuts and bolts. Hi, how are you? We're glad you're here. And our students walk their entire schedule in a half a day. And so we want them to be able to get the lay of the building, see their teachers, but also a lot of those unstructured times like lunch and hallways. We really want them to know how that works so they can be a little less anxious coming into such our large buildings.
And Mr. Lindquist, I'm sure that's similar at the middle school level, but tell us a little bit about some of those supports that are available at middle school that students aren't even aware of when they come through the doors.
Yeah, I think it's very, very similar. Lunch is usually the last thing they're thinking about here. It's always, how can I walk a building that large with nobody telling me where to go? So that initial transition piece, with construction, the window will be a little bit later this year, and it might even be a little after transition day. But across the board, we all give time for parents, and we encourage parents to bring their students into the building, pick up their schedules in person, and then walk the building with their student as many times as they can. Come back a second day, a third day. The biggest anxiety piece is getting from class to class to class. The second one is lunch, but to encourage some of the, we'll call it camaraderie or making sure nobody's on an island, we make sure that all kids sit by class to begin. So for the first couple weeks of lunch, we don't have the random seating at a middle school level. So they will sit with their class, so nobody sits alone, nobody has to go home after a traumatic first day, it's saying they sat at the end of the lunch table. So we keep them by class. That takes care of lunch. We walk them back and forth. It's a comforting piece. By the end of the day, they're happy they ate. They're happy they sat with their class, and they're actually connecting with peers that they will see every day and hopefully building those early relationships. Other fears, maybe lockers. Lockers are always a thing. We practice those a ton. It usually takes kids up to 4 days to get it kind of down where they're feeling comfortable. After that, we're good to go. Across the board, though, through all this early introduction, we bring in student leaders. We bring in the entire cheer team. We bring in usually 50% of our staff. They're all in the halls throughout these entire days where students can walk the building, and they're all supporting them in any way they can so that there are familiar faces in every hallway throughout the building, and it'll help every student have that connection and that belonging feeling that they need to walk through the door. Above all, though, kind of like Dr. Maid was saying there, that first, really for us, the first week is about just being comfortable and feeling successful. So on Friday, you walk your whole schedule, you sat with some friends you've now made, you know where to go to the bus, because the bus, that's the Wildcats everywhere at the end of the day, the first day. And by that last day, they're streamlining exactly where they need to go. So I'd say nervous wise, it's usually those unstructured times inside the classroom. No, they're usually excited for those pieces, especially in their electives and some of their favorite cores. But those are some of the hurdles we see and ways we work towards being successful in those areas.
So in a similar vein, Mr. Blakemore, transition can be stressful. It can be exciting. There's so many emotions that come with it. What strategies would you recommend students of any age really take if they're feeling a little overwhelmed with the process?
So some of the things that are already built in that Dr. Maid and Mr. Lindquist shared, I think are excellent. Being exposed to the school, having your schedule, thinking through having that trusted adult that you can talk with, if that's a grown-up that they live with or an aunt or uncle, somebody that student can talk with about, here's what I'm afraid of. They can put a plan in place. Think, okay, well, if you're afraid of your schedule, like Mr. Lindquist said, about, the timing of getting from class to class, let's go walk it. Let's go get your schedule. Let's walk it. That way they've experienced that. They've been exposed to that. And they realize, oh, it's not as scary as I thought. Because typically that's the truth. Our fears aren't truly, as bad as we think they are once we have experienced them. And two, parents making sure that they're expressing confidence and just kind of being cautious that no matter the age of their children, the things that they might say that their children hear, because children hear at every age so much more than parents typically might imagine that they hear, and that the stresses of parents similarly can impact a child even if they're not talking about certain things. So making sure that parents are taking care of themselves, that they're expressing confidence in their child or their teenager, and being able to be successful on day one of school, that maybe they're talking about their own experiences a little bit with their kids about, oh, you know what, when I started school I felt the same way, just like we all do with friends, making sure that we're relating and kind of demystifying some of those things that might be fearful. But a lot of those transition activities can help with that. And a lot of times too, what I'll hear from parents is a few parents, not a lot, that they are afraid that their child is just going to have all these behaviors or all these struggles. But then they're so surprised after the first few days or weeks that once they're kind of really integrated into the system, once they really belong, that kind of their fears are abated, that it's not really as scary as it seemed, and that the parents' worries, can kind of wash away a bit because their child is, often doing better than what they had imagined.
And Dr. Maid or Mr. Lindquist, whoever wants to chime in, are there other strategies you would recommend students and families take to prepare for the year, especially over the summer?
Mr. Lindquist, I'll go. We want to see kids up here. We really, really do. Obviously, we are having summer school here at Lee Summit West. But in terms of what Mr. Lindquist was saying, bring your parents. We have maps. Walk the building. We want people in our building. We want them to feel like they belong, and that so they can have an easy transition. So, if you were to reach out to us, we are always here. That's our number one goal, is to make sure that students feel safe and that they can be successful when they're here. So I say just come up, tour the building in August when we're all back. And then you're going to get access to that, and then attend transition. Do your research on our website, on all especially the 3 high schools' websites. If you go to our websites and click the little sports icon, you're going to be able to see athletics, activities, co-curricular clubs. You will see that if there is something that there's probably something that you're involved in that you have an interest in, and you're going to find so many people that have that same interest, especially at a larger school. So just do your research about that. Check out the different things, see what you want to get involved in. I think that's something that definitely you can do before we start school in August.
I would echo the reaching out and getting involved, but I really think you have to have a contact point in this building. You have to create connections, and it's great to create them early. There's already some parents that have been reaching out, and we're working through activities that we can do to support their specific students' needs in May and June. But in late July, all assistant principals are back across the buildings, and we all encourage any parent to reach out to their grade level assistant and try to come up and visit. We have times set up in late July and early August where assistant principals take time aside and meet with kids and parents and connect and show buildings, talk about opportunities, and just put a face with a building so that when you walk in, whether it is transition day or to walk your schedule 10 different times in 4 different days, there is a person that you're connecting with early, and you feel that family, we'll call it a vibe, very early on.
And this question is for anyone who wants to chime in too. How do you involve students in what you're planning for transitions? How do you collect that feedback about ways to support students or things to do different next year?
We survey. While we as adults think that we have this wonderful plan and a great day and it's fantastic, we've got some honest feedback on, Dr. May, that's a little dated. We probably need to, they're very nice about giving feedback, but we want it to be beneficial for them. We want it to be meaningful, and we want to be intentional about the activities that we're doing and making sure that we are reaching our common goal. So we do survey our freshmen, and we also utilize our Titan ambassadors, our student organizations, especially at Lee's Summit High School. I think they have over 200 kids that come to their upperclassmen that come to their transition day. And so we really want to not only survey our freshmen after they've been here, but also make sure that we are connecting with some of our student leaders. Are we really giving the message? Is our message coming across the way that we want? So we want it to be what they need, not necessarily what the adults need. We want it to be a meaningful experience for students first.
Mr. Lindquist, Mr. Blakemore, any thoughts on involving students in this work?
Yeah, so for us, it'll be a little bit different with 6th and 7th grade. We've never gone that large where 2/3 of the school is new to the building. But in the past and moving forward, across the board, our mentors who are surveyed early on, so we'll have a survey for 6th and 7th graders. Many of those same students become the mentors in 8th grade, and oftentimes they're a part of that solution. So when they're surveyed in 6th grade, they have input in 8th grade, and we can go back through those survey results and modify as we go. So those students are having an impact on what they experienced and being able to be a part of improving that process.
And with so many elementary schools, it's going to vary so much from school to school, the ways that the principal might get feedback about, the different transition activities that we're doing. One thing that comes to mind, though, is it's often a practical thing to use, older students, would have been 6th graders in the past. Let's make sure it'll be 5th graders to help support kindergartners at the end of the day and to help them, be able to transition to kids country, transition to the bus, to be able to get to car rider, things like that. Just again, because they're new to the building, making sure that they are comfortable, that they know that somebody's going to be there to support them. It's a great leadership opportunity for the older students, and they love it. And then the younger students clearly, are clinging on to the older students, and they love it too. And then with just, not brand new kindergartners, but any new student to the building, there could be a variety of other things like new student lunches or, any sort of new student groups to be able to help, integrate them into the school. And that might be with a school counselor, that could be with an administrator. And that's in addition to all the different activities that a teacher would do to be able to make sure that students feel welcome into their classroom as well.
So just a reminder for our audience, if you guys have questions about items and components of our conversation that our panelists are talking about, feel free to put them in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. Dr. Maiden, Mr. Lindquist, I do have some questions about sort of the academic and extracurricular opportunities. So you talked a lot about what you do to inform students about the opportunities available, but what resources are there for parents who might want to get up to speed right away, right now, maybe right after this call, on what opportunities are available at the middle and high school level?
I'll jump on there first, Dr. Main. So our biggest piece here, we're still working through some components of what a 6th through 8th grade full athletic and activity program, as well as clubs, will look like. There will be a July letter that contains everything from all of our buildings, every activity, every developmental league, every club we offer, and ways and contacts for everybody to connect with the correct person. We're still filling up all those slots and staffing. We're still working through all the new activities. Part of the board focus with that 6th through 8 transition was creating activities, adding to 8th grade, adding to 7th grade, and creating new opportunities for 6th grade. And through that process, we're having to add additional staff to make that all work. So I would say the July letter usually comes out early to mid-July. It highlights many things like how to fill out a physical. There's a profile that every student has to have if they will do an athletic event. It's called Privet. You would have to fill that out, but it would be paying close attention to all school messengers that come out from your new middle school. And that new middle school will highlight everything to offer in the building, how to get involved, and who the contact is.
I would say one of our biggest resources is our website that we have, specifically even at all 3 high schools, where you can get all of our camps and events over the summer. It has all of our clubs, activities, our calendar. So if you are looking at a high school website, that is a great resource. We do keep that updated to make sure that everybody is aware. In terms of the letter, like what Mr. Lindquist was talking about, we actually really highlight clubs at Freshman Transition Day. So before we have our transition day, we will send out a letter to parents with a link that will have every club that we offer. And so we actually have what's called a club rush during our Freshman Transition Day, where students will pick 3 clubs that they would like to be, just go to, and they'll spend about 7 minutes in the club and then they go to the next one. So we want to get that information out early so that parents and students can go over that, so they can see all the mini clubs that we offer during the school year. But I would think right now, I would really check out our webpage. So that has everything from extracurricular, co-curricular, activities, clubs. And then I also say reach out to our administrators, our activities directors, their support staff, and it's real specific on who you can contact, especially I can speak to Lee Summit West website. If you are wanting about soccer, it's got the coach's email on there. So it's got contacts for everybody in terms of a lot of our extracurricular and co-curricular.
Excellent. So again, we are going to wrap up our panel part of this webinar, and I encourage you, if you have any questions for our panelists, to put them in the Q&A box. I'm not seeing any at the moment, so I'm going to ask you guys a question to see if anybody can ask some questions while we're finishing this last one. So really, I'm just going to open it up, regardless of the time of year, regardless of the age of the student, how do you build belonging in your school? And I'll let you answer that however you'd like. And Mr. Blakemore, I'm going to have you go first.
Perfect. I was going to say, I'm going to jump in because it's just such an exciting topic, because when and I'm sure it's similar in the secondary levels, but when we have children for as long as we have them, 5th K to 5, now used to be K to 6, there's just so many different years that they can build relationships with each other. And belonging has been something that's been growing in our district for several years now, and becoming much more intentional with it. And across elementary schools, one of the specific trends that I've noticed, and it won't be in every school necessarily, but it's growing, is that there's these, family groups. We're the Roadrunners, that's our mascot at Richardson. And so we call them our nest groups, which is a lot of times are associated with your mascot in some way. And so it's a K 5 group of students, and they're building relationships with each other. And as new students come in, they are being integrated into those groups as well. And so we increase belonging by increasing those relationships having lots of leadership opportunities for students as well, whether that's student council, having students lead our assemblies, and planning with teachers throughout that, having lots of student involvement in all of the events that we do. And a couple of the basic practices that we do as well are an opening and a closing activity each day in all of our classrooms. So that might look like, a circle time in the morning, which might sound really, kindergarten-y, but it's not. There's a lot of fun, engaging activities that, help connect students where everybody's on the same level. You can tap out if you don't want to participate, but if you do want to share, it's an activity that everybody can be a part of. You don't have to know anything to be a part of it. It's just something fun or engaging to connect people to each other. And that opens and closes just about every school day at most of our schools. And that's just a really basic way to be able to get kids feeling like they're on the same same level as everybody else. I'm sure there's more, but the opening and closing circles are really the two big pieces.
And I'll try to speak globally on this between all the middle schools. I'll start with I harp on everybody the first day in August, and I think all principals and assistant principals do. Activities, athletics, clubs, be in at least one. That's the choice part of the belonging. The non-choice part, we start with the small group, our family group, which are our advisories. Our advisories have many different team activities, social lessons, ways to work on building a collaborative environment as a team. Our teams generally range in that 120 to 140 kids. When you take those advisories and make the team, we have team activities, whether they are working together for a goal or playing tug of war and working against each other. Teachers are involved. It's a way to connect and create opportunities again for them to be social. And then within all those, the belonging piece, going beyond your team and growing and finding other students with similar likeness, whether it's through our library times, all sorts of different themed days from Otaco Tuesday across all the middle schools. We have ways to engage kids with groups of students with similar interests, no matter how obscure they are. That's the goal. If they can't find the person they like in their advisory, if they can't find the person they like in their team, maybe we can find that person somewhere, get them to belong in a group, even though they already have their little close-knit family and advisory. We can still grow in other areas and branch out and create the wide connections that we need for them to be successful here.
To pick off back up what Mr. Lindquist says, we do have advisory here. So we actually start out the year, we have it at least at West, we have it built into our day, Monday through Thursday. And so they will be with their advisory group Monday through Thursday for probably the first 3 to 4 weeks of school. So that's kind of where we start. And it's non-academic based, and we're working on, some of those soft skills, and they have lessons and team building. One thing that we are really trying to be intentional at the high school level is understanding that belonging is not a one size fits all. And we showcase a lot about academics, we showcase a lot about athletics, but we need to be more intentional about showcasing the other things that are going on in our school and what our students are doing. So just trying to find ways to showcase the whole aspect of what a student is, and not just like our assemblies. We talk about the fight song, we showcase athletics, we showcase academics, we showcase robotics. So it's how do we celebrate each student's individual and how they are individual, but how they fit into our family is something that we are trying to be really intentional about. So they feel like, you know what, if I'm not a 4.0 student, that's perfectly fine. I still belong to Lee Summit West, and we're still a part of LSR Salmon Family. it just looks a little bit different for me. And so just being really intentional about celebrating students' individuality and how they just make us, they just make us who we are.
I have a question for middle school, Mr. Lindquist. How will the middle schools be set up? Will my incoming sixth graders' core classes be grouped together, or will they be in the mix traveling throughout the building with older students for those core classes?
So part of that depends on your building structure. Every building's a little bit different. So for core classes, all of our buildings put those core classes right next to each other. So say that your sixth or seventh grader is on Team 7-1. Some people call them, like, I think the Falcons are Team 7-1 blue. If you're on that team, your 4 cores are right next to each other. At Pleasant-Lee, it looks a little bit different. They're right next to each other in a straight hall. At Summit Lakes, they'll be in a pod. At East Trails, they'll be in a pod. And it depends on your placement within Campbell of where your class will be. Outside of those cores, we are all structuring our master schedules where they are breaking out. So say a student has 4 cores and they have 5 cores for 6th grade, 4 cores for 7th grade. Their breakout time would be the art, music, PE, which is on a rotation based on semester and quarter. And then their elective wheel, which is 6 classes that rotate every 6 weeks in 1 hour. So a majority of the 6th graders only pass outside their core once a day. I can speak to Pleasant-Lee specifically. Our 6th graders are on a different passing period than our 7th graders, and they will not run on bells. So 7th and 8th graders will pass together, but we have about 270 6th graders here, and they will run not on bells, and they will go out at the same times to their specials. And so we'll keep them in a little bit of a bubble before we release them to the larger bubble of the school.
I have a question for elementary that our assistant director of PR, Talia Evans, answered in the chat, but I wanted to read it out loud. The question was, I will have a kindergartner with an IEP. At what point can I meet with her new team of teachers to make sure we're all on the same page? Casey, you may have some things to add to this, but I know Stacy Mathis, our director of special services, wanted to make sure that parents knew that they can reach out to their special education contact for their school now to begin some of those conversations. And so we have a link to those contacts in the chat, but if you'd like to add anything, please do.
So that's the main information that they need. That's excellent. The only other thing I would add is whether it's an IEP or a 504 or any concern that a parent would have or any sort of supports that a parent would want to make sure is in place for their child, we want them to see that we are on their team. We are a part of their team and helping their child succeed. So at any point, if they have a concern, they can reach out, they can call the school and talk to the principal or whoever they need to talk to so that we can make sure that we are doing whatever we need to do to support a child.
Another question we have is, and I'll let anyone answer this, is there follow through for the students transitioning into the new schools beyond the start of the year?
Am I good to go? All right. So for us, we do survey throughout the year. Once again, our focus isn't just one facet of their life. So if we're talking about grades and academics, if a student is struggling with 1 or more Fs, we call them in, we follow through on what's going on. Is it a class selection? Is it a passion piece? Is it they're just unhappy maybe? And so we follow through, we connect them with resources, whether in building or outside of building, to get kids to feel the caring and family relationship we're going for here. Throughout the year, throughout all those surveys, we're constantly bringing students in and asking them what they're interested in. We keep data on what proportion of our students are involved in activities, athletics, and clubs. And we're constantly looking at ways to grow those opportunities outside of school to get them to feel like they belong and have a place to be here after school. Success is really important, and that success can be, the percentage of that success can be improved tenfold if they have something they're coming to after school, even if it's for an hour once a week. It's that opportunity to grow and connect that makes them want to be in this building every day and succeed.
I don't see any more questions in the chat, so I'm going to conclude us with one last question of my own, and that is my former reporter question, which is, what did you wish that I'd asked you that I didn't ask you tonight? If you had anything to add to this topic, what would you tell our parents who are listening in? And I'll let anyone who wants to go first go first.
Casey and I are both clicking our unmute button. So
we need a button, yeah.
And then being respectful and then clicking it again. So thank you, Casey. Because I'm going to talk about what Casey's role is a group of individuals that I have not talked about at the secondary level. It's just a lot of the adults in the building and how much our adults care for students. And that is not only our teachers, that's our support staff, that's our administrators, but I think our school counselors are an integral part of making sure that students feel like they belong, and they help transition. A lot of times at the secondary level, just to be very honest, they just assume that counselors, help build schedules. And if you need to change a schedule, then you go to them. but they're really, really one of our, first lines in terms of if a student is struggling or even succeeding. There are people that will partner with families, they partner with teachers, they partner with administrators. So that is one thing that I would like to showcase in terms of some of our high school counselors at all three buildings are some of the most caring, compassionate, passionate people that I get the pleasure of working with on a daily basis. And so we do showcase that with our freshmen. At Freshman Transition Day, we want them to see who their counselor is. We want them to know where the counseling center is. We go through how to make an appointment with the counselor because we want them to feel supported, not only in the classroom, but also in other facets of the school day.
Thank you for saying that, Dr. Maid. And I saw some head nodding from Mr. Lindquist. I know that's true across every single school in our district, that counselors are passionate about helping students succeed and that we are always trying to connect with students. The one last thing I was going to say, Katie, was that the elementary counselors put together kind of a tip sheet for incoming kindergartners for parents. And I think that you all are linking that and this as well tonight. Some of the things to highlight from that are specific to anxiety. There's a lot of good picture books out there. The King of Kindergarten. There's one, I think Clifford has one. You can Google kindergarten picture book and you're going to find lots of good ones that kind of help your little ones think about what's it going to look like and have kind of a positive perspective on being at school all day in kindergarten, as well as having a goodbye routine. It's important that sometimes if students are anxious about going to school, they'll want to belabor that goodbye and lengthen it and be like, no, I don't want to ride the bus today. And it's like, okay, well, then I'll take you in the car. I don't want to get out of the car. But to think about what your routine is going to be and to stick with that. And that doesn't make you a bad parent. That helps you, and it helps your child know that you believe in them, that they can do this, and that this routine is what's going to be best for everybody's day, that they get on the bus. And that before that, our goodbye routine might be 2 hugs and a kiss, whatever it might be, but just to stick with that and to not offer an early pickup. It's tempting. It's really tempting to, if your child, and this is at any level, if your child's emailing or texting you, or, if during the day you're afraid that maybe your child is just upset during the day and not enjoying themselves, it's tempting to pick them up early. And it's easy to kind of get into a hole of doing that and to kind of build this habit of avoiding what they're anxious about rather than empowering them and helping them know that even though it's hard, they can get through it, which really helps them more so in the long run. Making sure they, know that this is a simple thing, but whatever's in their lunchbox, what can they throw away? What can they not throw away? How to open up their car door if they're a car rider, because we have lots of 5-year-olds when their parents pull up in the car rider line and mom or dad or grandma's getting out of the car to run around and open up the door on the other side and slows everything down, which is a silly logistical thing, but it's a life skill, being able to open up the door for yourself and get out. Some of those basics, like those 2 examples, as well as lots of other things on there.
Thanks, Mr. Blakemore. Mr. Lindquist, last but definitely not least.
Oh, man. Well, I will tell you, our middle school staff is ecstatic. We have been trying to steal a year from elementary for who knows how long. You never quite have the kids as long as you want them. You never feel like, they're in and they're out, 7th and 8th, boom, high school. They hit 8th grade and they're ready to jump on to be freshmen. Now we can grab those 6th graders. The staff is pumped. The opportunities are growing. They seem almost endless now compared to some of the past opportunities. And the ability to make a connection in 6th grade and have 3 years with a student. I'm sorry, Mr. Blakemore, we had to get that extra year. We are pumped. We're ready to get them in the building. And if they're not ready, we'll get them ready. We're excited. So that would be our big thing here.
Well, that's a great conclusion to our panel for tonight. I want to thank each of you, our panelists, for sharing your time and providing your expertise tonight. And I want to thank everyone who's listening tonight for spending some time with us. This is something that we hope to do at least one more time before the end of this school year, and then implement in a regular way to provide an avenue for having conversations and exploring topics of high interest to parents starting next school year. So please follow our social media channels and our e-newsletters for more information about those future events. With that, we're going to conclude for the night. Thank you again, and please have a pleasant rest of your evening. Bye-bye.